The Irrational Confidence Podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it was week number 8. It was a shocking weekend. The late games got born real quick, fast, and in a hurry. It was an awful, awful day if you were wanting to see a competitive game late at night, and then maybe switched over to multiple other things. It is what it is, but I'm joined by my co-host, the man who is going to celebrate National Brandied Fruit Day. You skipped out on the brown water yesterday, Fresh. My co-host, Fresh, how you doing, buddy?
Well, I did skip out 100%. I had a victory scotch after the Dogs took care of Texas, but yeah, I'm doing great. Anytime you can go down and take out Longhorns in their stadium, it's a fantastic affair. Dogs played wild. I think that was a culmination of a crazy, another amazing, crazy college football Saturday.
Right. What was really that stood out to you yesterday? I mean, definitely Georgia going into Austin, definitely can touch on that. But anything else that really stood out to you on week 8?
I will say the Big Ten landscape. USC, they thought they were going to come in and have, we're great, Lincoln Riley. You go to Maryland and you get beat. And you're just terrible. Iowa losing to Michigan State. Wisconsin actually showing signs. Yes, it was Northwestern, but showing signs of life of improvement these past 3 weeks and winning 3 straight games. They're kind of bouncing back, getting themselves back in the picture. Nebraska, we figured on Matt Rule, this team would be a physical football team. They'd play some defense, and they would actually show up and compete. They were a complete no-show in Bloomington. That's a major issue for that program. And Dylan Raiola is obviously showing he is not the man. And I think Ohio State and Georgia may have dodged the bullet there by not having him the quarterback, because he looks terrified in the pocket. But on the other side, Indiana is being a dominant force. They didn't just beat Nebraska. They beat them back to the 70s. I think they said like the worst loss in Nebraska history in like the past 20 years, or even in the Big Ten, something like that. But they beat the trash out of them. And they announced that they are legit. They're not just, it's Indiana, it's cute. They haven't played anybody. They showed up and they took it to them and they beat them down. Now, they still have Michigan. They still have, Michigan's not much to laugh at anymore. They still have Ohio State coming down. So we'll know Indiana a little bit later in the season, and how really truly national contender they are. But they are showing right now they are a legit football team. And, Cincinnati has done a great job getting that first year momentum going. And they look at, Illinois, Michigan. First of all, Illinois, great job on the uniform, especially the helmets. You did an amazing job
I love
there.
Those helmets.
But Michigan, they should not have been ranked. They're not in my top 25. They haven't been there for the past week or two.
No.
The AP teaming them, there's only name alone. That team offensively horrendous, defensively. If you have guys who are about to get drafted, you know what? Might as well take the rest of the season off, except for the Ohio State game, because you're not getting it done. This is not the past 3 years, and right now I hate to see it, but it shows that Connor Stallions had something to do with that. It shows recruiting has something to do with it, because the cover right now looks a little bare in Ann Arbor. The coaching is not there. Sharon Moore is not in the team ready to play. A lot of quarterback issues. Offensive line's not playing the way. Like the tables are turned right now in the Big Ten across the board, and that's the biggest observation I had from week 8.
Yeah. The fact that Georgia goes into Texas and really beats down a program that we both had ranked number 1, because we thought that they had looked as the most consistently impressive team, is something truly remarkable. And again, if you watch the first 2 drives of the football game, you're like, oh, okay, this is going to be a legit battle between two programs. And then all of a sudden, Georgia just takes that game by the throat and doesn't even really let Texas breathe the whole way. I know, Fresh, we were texting during the game. You kept on, you're going to try to play it low key, and those of us who are just fans of college football are like, nah, there's something different about this game. There's a different attitude as well. And we talked off air about how you comparing it to the Alabama game. And I said the difference to me was when watching the first half of the Georgia-Alabama game, I felt that it was more Georgia shooting themselves in the foot than it was Alabama taking control of that game. Yeah, Alabama played fantastic in that first half, but I felt like Georgia just needed to clean up the mistakes. In this game, it felt like Georgia had completely taken the will out of the Texas Longhorns, and that they were controlling the game, not stuff that Texas themselves were doing to kind of put themselves into the hole. that type of feeling when I feel like it is the other team imposing their will on somebody, that's when I kind of go, it's going to be very difficult to make halftime adjustments to that. It's going to be
Yeah, I mean,
very difficult to
that
change
Georgia
that.
defense was flying around. They were playing extremely physical. Jalen Walker, Michael Williams, Dalen
They
Everett.
look better.
I mean, Dalen Everett, you never got in the coverage situation. Like, that's where sometimes one of those issues popped up in the past. But the sack, I think that really energized the entire team. When he came off the corner blitz and blew up Ewers, caused the fumble, that really set the tone for all right, it's going to be a battle too. We're here to play. In that first half, Georgia's defense allowed 38 total yards, 2 of those being rush yards, 5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, 3 forced turnovers, and Texas was 0 for 7 on third down. That is an elite dominating effort from a defense that we have seen in the past as a standard. So we were kind of waiting. Could Georgia's defense play to their standard? We haven't seen it for the past couple of weeks. We kind of see some points given up. And they showed up like they did versus Clemson, like they did versus Florida State, in the bowl game, like they've done in the past where we got used to it. And if that standard continues, it's obviously going to be very beneficial and positive for the Dogs. But that right there set the tone and moved it forward because Carson Beck, either getting dropped passes across the board or just making some bad throws, still looks a little uneasy in big games. So the defense plays at a high level. It allows them to settle in.
If I'm a Georgia fan, the thing that is scaring me is Carson Beck. Is that he's the thing where, again, if we go back, take a time machine right now, and we get Stetson Bennett, and again, I think on sheer overall talent, Carson Beck is the better quarterback. On leadership and big game, cold water veins, Carson Beck doesn't have that aspect right now. That would be the one thing that scares me with Georgia. But again, the big positive was to see the defense playing at the speed they were playing at, more importantly.
Yeah, they were fast. In our preview, I didn't really talk about scheme at all during our preview. I really talked about where's the leadership from this team, the on-field leadership, which players are going to step up and be a vocal person who's going to look everyone else in the eye and say, it's time to go. We saw that in defensive end. I think offensively, we got some from the offensive line, but still, Carson Beck, you're the quarterback. You're making millions from NIL deals. Like, you've got to start being a little more vocal leader and looking everybody else in the eye and say, it's time to go, whether catch the football or that's on me for a bad throw. I got to be better. But that accountability's got to come in at some point.
Yeah, it was an exciting time. And Fresh, think about this. Like, we have a huge game there, and I made the joke last night as we were texting. I feel like we're talking about taking a time machine, is that we are almost experiencing the craziness of the 2007 season all over again. Because, again, Indiana, 7-0. Not a knock on Indiana, but someone put it out on Twitter, and I got to remember, I wish I could give them credit right now, but who had on their bingo card that Indiana would still be undefeated over Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, LSU, Michigan, Clemson, all of these premier teams that have been really, really good over the last decade, that Indiana would be the team that would stay undefeated as well. Then you talk about what Army, Navy are. We were so angry last year. What was it? Army wasn't bowl eligible, even though they won enough games.
Navy wasn't bowl eligible.
What? Neither one of those teams. They weren't bowl eligible last year.
Army was. Navy was not.
Okay, and Navy wound up winning the Army Navy game. This is awesome. Army Navy bowl eligible and undefeated right now at 7-0. That Army Navy game is getting like. There's that possibility that we could see Army Navy twice in a year. And Tulane's got something to say. Memphis is still kind of hanging around there. In there, North Texas lost to Memphis this week, so I think they're kind of out of it as well when you come to tiebreaker. But that the week before the Army-Navy game in the conference championship, we could get Army-Navy both rated in the top 25. Amazing times to be alive here.
Well, you mentioned Army, like Bryson Daly. The last quarterback for Army that I remember that was this dominant was Ronnie Makeda back in 1996, and he got drafted by the Packers. But Daly has set the single season program record for rushing touchdowns. It is October 19th, October 20th today. He had 147 yards passing and 1 passing touchdown. He had 31 carries for 171 and 5 rushing touchdowns yesterday. And Army has the nation's longest winning streak at 11 straight games. They are, yes, their schedule is probably not as daunting as other programs and the other losses come into play, but they've won 11 straight. what Coach Monken's done up there in West Point and that entire coaching staff is tremendous. They get the guys in there, they fit the program, they're disciplined, and they play football at a high level. And going back to being bowl eligible for Indiana, Indiana's bowl eligible before Ohio State in October, which is strange. But Vanderbilt has 5 wins right now, and they have 5 games left on their schedule. Now, the remaining 5 games are going to be a little tough. They have Texas, who's going to be a little irritated coming to Nashville next week. But they have Auburn November 2nd. Auburn is a terrible football team, and Vandy can beat them and get bowl eligible. And what Clark Lee has done there in Nashville and getting that Commodore program around is it's just at the same kind of level as what Indiana. Like these programs, the guys are coaching.
Right.
It shows if you play disciplined football, if you listen to your coaches, if you hustle and you give up effort and you don't shoot yourself in the foot and you believe in yourself, you're going to be successful in some way or shape or form.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Boise State was off, so we can't have a Ashton Genty update here on his track towards Barry Sanders' rushing touchdown record. But again, also take a look at the Big 12 right now, Fresh. You know, BYU smothering defense over there. And then same with Iowa State in a dogfight against UCF last night. Impressive job in the Big 12. And again, we've talked about cannibalization of different conferences. It really is looking like Kansas State, Iowa State, and BYU are all rising to the top there. It's going to make for an interesting down the track. Here they come. Texas Tech getting boat raced by Baylor was ugly, though. That killed me inside.
The same thing. Texas Tech getting boat raced. It wasn't even close. And then you look at Arizona State going up to Cincinnati, who was kind of having up and down, but don't have their quarterback. They couldn't get, Scatabo going, and they lost by 10. Obviously, they're having kicker trials right now in Tempe. And then Colorado, we've been pretty harsh on Coach Prime in that program and used the transfer portal, all that nonsense. They went out there, they took care of business for Arizona, and they're in the mix. It's a long way to go, but Colorado being there, if Travis Hunter can stay healthy, because this is the second straight year where he's had injury concerns. Maybe it's too many snaps. But if he can stay healthy, that Colorado team will be able to, be an impact and be a force down the stretch and maybe get themselves in the conversation.
Right. And the interesting thing, too, we look at what Prime has done, and he didn't just, beat Arizona. He just took them to the woodshed as well. Good job out of them. And it's just wild to see, Notre Dame. We thought that Georgia Tech would give them a little bit more of a fight, and Notre Dame just destroyed them in Atlanta.
Early on, it looked a little rough, but then Notre Dame showed their true colors. All right, they're playing a back and forth, but even though Pirates had some playing time, Coach Freeman's all right, guys, it's time to take over. Now, Notre Dame's schedule going forward isn't looking as great with Florida State being brutal, terrible. There's not enough adjectives to describe how bad they are. USC being, average at best. They have to start blowing people out and beating them convincing like they did Georgia Tech to tell the committee that they're worthy. Close wins are not going to help. They're only ranked to win a game the rest of the way is Navy this upcoming week. And actually, I think they're probably banking thank you, Navy, for being undefeated because you're making our schedule look better because 2 big names in USC and Florida State are absolutely horrendous. But Notre Dame's got
Army too.
So you have 2 ranked teams left. Who would have thought the 2 ranked teams on the back of the schedule for Notre Dame are Army, Navy, and not Florida State and USC. But it's going to be a challenge of how they have to keep maintaining their foot on the gas pedal to show the committee that they're worthy because they're NBC money, a lot of rich alumni at Notre Dame can keep them in the picture. The broadcasting, the viewership numbers are going to be a reason why they might get in over somebody else. So don't look at just the resume to resume. Look at viewership because this is TV, folks. This is entertainment. And Notre Dame's name and brand might get in over another team because they're going to attract viewers in a game. And for hate watching also.
Right. Hey, folks, if you've made it this far, real quick, hit that subscribe button and notification bell and get notified as we continue to the rest of the season and drop every single week a new episode for you. So hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. That's the only plug I'm going to do for that one, though, Fresh. Hey, here's a really good talking point right now. We are over 50% of the way through the season. You made mention of it there in your talk about resumes in the college football playoff committee. A couple weeks ago, you made the statement that you felt very strongly that the SEC was going to get 4 teams into the playoffs. I said that it was locked that they're going to get 3. I said the 4th team was a 50-50 shot. As we're going through this wild, crazy season, and again, we're starting to see the top tier teams in every conference rise to the top. We're seeing which group of 5 teams are kind of making a name for themselves. Let's go back to that idea of the 12-team conference or a 12-team playoff. How many teams do you legitimately think are coming out of each conference now?
Okay.
Not we're over 50% of the way through a season.
So I'm just going to go ahead and put Boise State in. So keep count. That's my one right there.
Okay.
From the Big Ten, I think we're going to get Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon. Indiana, the schedule down the stretch, they're going to be that wild card. But I think that is right now, if we're looking at after the eye test of everything in the league, from a national perspective of being an elite, one of the 12 best teams, I think that's where Indiana's going to be in that fringe territory. And really, if they compete versus Ohio State and they actually show up and play, that will be the thing. If they get blown out or just, if there's a significant gap of level, that will be the eye test later in the year when the committee is truly paying attention to make that decision.
Well, let me pause you real quick there. If they're going, let me ask you this. Do you feel like the committee would give them a pass if they're going into the Ohio State game 10-0? Like they would be 10-0 before playing Ohio State.
A 10-0 would, I think, weigh heavily. But again, if they get beat by 20, 21, 24, significant margin where they just absolutely dominated the line, that's going to raise questions in the committee's mind of, are they truly one of the best teams? Like, who have they played? Because, hey, they beat Nebraska. That was a very impressive win.
That was.
And but if Nebraska stinks it up the rest of the way,
True.
Illinois, I do not think they're one of the top 12 best teams in the country. They are playing their schedule well and they're beating teams. But that team, they're good, but they are not an elite. I think that's where that gap, Illinois is going to go from that good to elite standpoint. There's obviously a lot left in the season, but I don't think they can compete with Ohio State or Oregon. They haven't in the past few years. I don't know how they handle this Penn State team. We'll see. So I think the 3, 4, if other things fall off the rails for the Big Ten. The SEC, Georgia, Texas are basically our loss right now. I think Tennessee is in a good spot. They can't afford another loss. The only loss they can afford is to Georgia, and they can't lose by like 25, 28, 30 points. If they get the brakes beat off them by the Dogs, that might raise questions because right now Tennessee, their defense has been very good. That passing attack in Nico is brutal, and people have seen it. Like that, if you watch that third Saturday in October game, the quarterback play was pretty painful to watch. Quarterback play across the country was pretty painful to watch yesterday. But in that game alone, there were some terrible throws, terrible decisions, trying to do too much. And it kind of like, is this team actually an elite team, or are they just beating up on everybody else? Because NC State, that win is looking less impressive. But Tennessee had to have that win versus Alabama, so that's where they were fringe. A&M LSU, that's the wild card in my opinion. Both teams right now undefeated in the league. They play each other this upcoming week. A&M, if they beat LSU, their schedule looks okay the rest of the way, and then they host Texas the last game of the regular season.
That's what I wanted to ask you.
That right there could be a way to vault that team into the true playoff conversation. Right now, I don't think that they're an elite top 12 team. I have them ranked in my top 20. The offense still is iffy. The defense from Mike Elko is really good. LSU has the offense. Can that defense play? So that LSU A&M game this upcoming week is going to be a true teller in the race for the SEC title game because one of them is going to be undefeated, keep going, and really supplying themselves as a true contender in the national aspect. Because that USC LSU game is looking bad. Like, how did LSU lose that football game? Was it just jitters? Was it, a whole summer off to get ready for one football game? Because they've obviously gotten so much better as the season's gone on, and you want to continue to keep getting better as the year goes on. You don't want to peak in August. But that right there's going to be, everyone's watching that night. What kind of questions linger from that perspective?
So right now on October 20th, when we're recording this, it is the selection Saturday or selection Sunday for the college football playoff. Right now, your confidence level, how many teams does SEC get in right now if you had to make a prediction?
4 from the SEC.
You still feel 4 right now.
I'm going 4 in the SEC.
Okay.
I'm going the
That's fine.
ACC. I think it's 2. Miami and Clemson are locks.
So let's go over to ACC. Let's go over to there now and talk about the ACC then.
It's Miami and Clemson. It's
okay.
I think Duke's been a cool story. Virginia Tech is not what we expect them to be. Pitt, I don't think is at an elite national level, but they're still undefeated. But Clemson has just been boat racing people left and right. Miami has that offense. I saw a stat yesterday. In the tumultuous and illustrious history of Miami football, both those terms have to come into play because it's a whole chaotic story. This Miami team is the first one to have scored 50 plus points in 4 or more games in a single season. Of all the Miami teams we've seen in the past, with all the elite talent, they've never had a team that scored 50 plus points in 4 games or more in a single season until right now with Cam Ward and that Hurricane offense. That defense, less than desired, but that offense can outscore people.
Yeah. What about SMU, man? So their one loss is to an undefeated. Hold on. SMU's one loss is to BYU. But now, if they run the tape, if they can get past Duke this weekend coming up, and then Pitt in 2 weeks, then they'd have 2 marquee wins. Both those teams are going to be ranked going forward. The rest of their schedule is very navigable. SMU,
they're in that Indiana range. Like they're in that fringe conversation because I think the branding of the team, even though SMU has tons of money, they have a lot of pockets back home. It's the branding of the schedule. A lot of money. It's the branding, it's the eyes. And if they can navigate themselves to an ACC title game, then they have a chance to announce themselves, or does someone else just completely fall off? We've talked about the Big 12 where there's a lot of good teams. Who's the elite? Oklahoma State and Utah came into the year, and they're both brutal.
Yeah.
Whether for multiple reasons, they're most really struggling. Kansas State that loss to BYU is actually looking better the way BYU's playing. Iowa State, maybe they survived UCF yesterday. That's the one thing people are waiting for them to fall through. Like, when's that other shoe going to fall? Obviously, they played Kansas State the last week of the year. That one's that weird conversation. Colorado, we know they have offensive line, like defensive line of scrimmage strength concerns, but they have specialists. How are they going to keep the season going down the grind of the schedule? So that I'm not 100% sold on the Big 12 getting in 2 teams. And it's possible, but I think SMU in that Indiana conversation is going to be like that bubble. Who's that 12th team in the playoff?
So only one team from the Big 12?
One from the Big 12. And I think Notre Dame actually is going to get put in that bubble conversation because they're not a lock, and they have to start blowing people out to maintain that conversation. Imagine this. SMU, Notre Dame, Indiana. Who would you put in if you have one spot?
SMU.
So Notre Dame's out. SMU's in.
Right. Now, in my defense.
That right there, that would be an amazing blind resume test.
Right.
Later down the road.
And here's my defense on that one. Now, most people, again, average college football fan is not going to turn on a bunch of SMU games. I had a feeling about SMU this year. I had a feeling. You're a program that joins the ACC and says you will pay us $0 in that TV deal this year. SMU gets nothing. Why? Because SMU's pockets are people have to understand this. A school like Texas and SMU and there's a couple other schools that are like this, but those schools do not necessarily need TV revenue. Yeah, it's great. It's a nice thing to have. SMU's got insane type of money behind it. So does a school like Texas. I know A&M has that type of money. Ohio State has that type of money. Notre Dame has that type of money. Alabama kind of does too, but
they have that money.
We're talking like stupid type of money here. I had a feeling that SMU's boosters over the last couple of years have made a really strong point of investing back into the football team because they want to bring it back to the old Big 8 days where SMU was a powerhouse program. Grand scandal aside, they were a very, very good football team on the field. They want to return to that. I've watched a couple of these SMU games, and this team is electric, man. They are putting up points on everybody. Now, again, I don't know how good their defense is. I don't know how much their defense has been really, truly tested. I'll be intrigued to see Duke. I don't think Duke's going to give them too much of a game in this. The game I'm circling is I want to see Pitt. I want to see how this SMU defense does against Pitt. Because if they do well, and again, SMU is very similar to, I kind of will put them, I'm going to make this wild comparison. They're similar to LSU. I think they got off to a rocky start to begin the year, and then all of a sudden they started saying, we're better than this, and we're going to start hitting our stride.
Well, that quarterback change, I think, really helped. Week 0 game, Preston Stone looks lost. Maybe the pressure was on him, and they made the quarterback change early on, and that team started taking off. And it's funny you bring up, the oil money and everything in Texas, where Pony Express, folks, if you haven't seen that ESPN 30 for 30, that stuff was legit. But every other school, and they make sure they call it out multiple times, but every other program in the state of Texas, much less the country, was doing everything that SMU was doing. The reason why SMU got busted is because boosters at Texas had a lot more ears of the NCAA and ears of the conference than SMU did, because they were still a smaller school. They had money, but they hadn't flexed their muscle. And people started wondering, why was SMU getting all these players? And now imagine you're playing college football 2025, and you have it on freshman mode, and you are, I'll say you're staying Houston State, and you're getting 5-star recruits, and you're landing 5-star players. You have the number 2 or 5, number 1 overall class in the entire country. People are going to start asking questions, how does staying Houston State get every single elite 5-star player in the Southeast and have them on the roster when they are playing in the Sun Belt or at whatever level they're in? That's what was happening. Everyone else was doing it, but they were able to keep everybody else taken care of. They were able to, shake the right hands, grease the right wheels, and SMU was left out hanging, and they're the ones that got busted. They've had the money forever. They decided to flex it because they got irritated and they got caught and they were made a scapegoat. Now it's basically you can do whatever the heck you want to do. We highly promote giving the money. They're going to funnel that cash because they're still mad about the 80s, and they're going to make sure at one point they win.
Right. I'm going to tell you this, Fresh. I personally think that the Big Ten and the SEC are guaranteed lock 3 teams. I think both of them are lock 3 teams. They're
right
6.
Now, they're locked.
They're 6. I got the ACC and the Big 12 champion. They have to be in by rule, and the group of 5 team. There's my 9 teams. All right. I think that the committee is going to look and guarantee 2 spots to the ACC, and I think they're going to guarantee 2 spots to the Big 12. My question is if the Big 10 or the SEC is going to get that 4th team, I don't think it's actually going to come from the ACC spot or the Big 12 person. I honestly think that the conversation is going to be a 4th team from one of those 2 conferences or Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is the one that's on the cut line.
So you had your 6, you had your 2 conference champions with 8, you had Boise State that's 9, and then you put in an extra SEC team, and you put in
extra ACC and Big 12.
So extra Clemson. So basically it comes down to that 12th spot is going to be a 4th from the Big 10 or a 4th from the SEC or Notre Dame.
And Notre Dame. Yep.
So right now, let's just put it this way. If it was Notre Dame, Indiana, Tennessee, who gets that 12th, who gets that final spot?
So here's what my decision is going to completely depend on. I want to see Tennessee versus Georgia, and I want to see Indiana versus Ohio State. That game, those games for each of those individual teams are going to tell me which one I would choose. And I will say this: my choice is probably between Indiana and Tennessee.
Now Notre Dame, if they win out,
They're
Northern Illinois loss. So that Northern Illinois loss, how much does that weigh in your mind? Even if now they beat A&M, and let's say A&M is actually one of the 3 teams in the SEC.
Okay.
They're already in the field, and you have that Northern Illinois loss. They win out, so they're 11-1. How much weight do you put on that loss for Northern Illinois week 2?
I don't know.
Even though it was weeks in the past, and they've looked better since then. They've lost to a match school who obviously isn't winning. They've had some losses ever since then. Like there's that one miracle win. It's not like they're in the playoff hunt themselves. So that
Right.
right there,
So
we've got. If we want to talk about playoff resumes, is the full schedule and the full body of work being looked
right,
at, or are we avoiding periods of time? So you know what, that was in September.
right.
Well, the full resume should be at play.
So if we're talking like because Tennessee though, if Tennessee is in this conversation, they already have their one loss. If they're a 2-loss team, I think it disqualifies them because again, I think that win-loss records should come into play when it is a toss-up to team. And again, you guys know I'm a huge Josh Heupel fan. I Tennessee has become one of the few SEC teams that I openly pull for and not like I just want to see good football games. Indiana is good if they have one loss on their resume and their losses to Ohio State. And then I'm comparing, that means that the only problem is that Indiana doesn't have that marquee win. Like their best win is going to be against Nebraska, which was a blowout, I guess. Michigan State. Michigan State looked pretty good against Iowa last night.
They're getting better.
They're getting better. And they're a team, and we both feel that they're a team. We have a lot of respect for Coach Smith. We still feel like they're a year or two away, but they're one of those teams on a rise. So again, that's the difference. You go, Indiana probably has a better loss than Notre Dame, but they don't have a better win if they're both 11-1.
Yes, I'll give you that.
Yeah, that I think the committee goes Notre Dame. I think
the money is going to come in.
Right.
Somebody's going to they're going to make a business decision where they're like, look, even though NBC is not in the field for the broadcasting of the game,
right?
Somebody knows somebody's going to be like, hey, either it's Notre Dame and their fans are going to watch, or you're going to hate watching Notre Dame and want to see them get blown out, and everyone's going to want to be on social media saying we told you so. They're going to put them in for that reason only.
Now, again, the question comes into play too: is if Penn State's 11-1? Now they're in, but
Penn State will be in. I think they'll be in hosting a game unless they win the Big Ten. I think they're going to be hosting games. So
right.
That'll be a fun game of if you have. This is I think what everyone truly wants. If Notre Dame and Penn State are hosting first round playoff games in the snow in December up in Indiana and Pennsylvania, that's what people want. And especially Big Ten Northeast fans, they want to see those Southern teams come up there in the winter and play. That would be. I mean, give me an A&M at Penn State in December. That would be a fun game.
Oh, it'd be a blast.
That's what they want. Or a Clemson.
A legit whiteout.
A Clemson at Notre Dame in December. Like that would be a fun game to watch. Or Miami up there coming against Penn State or Notre Dame if they don't win the ACC. Like those kind of scenarios about number one, who is deserving to be in, but how do they actually rank them to get the best matchup? Because I'm telling you right now,
right.
Somebody will make another business decision of, well, we have them ranked 1 through 12, and if we let it play out, this is how the matchups will be. But how about we move this around to make sure we have a better TV matchup? Because we're splitting hairs at 9, 10, 11, 12.
Right. And everyone knows what I want. Everyone knows that I want, and this is the reason why I want to put a second ACC or a second Big 12 team in, because I think that they will give the idea of Boise State hosting a home playoff game more credence if they're like, all right, we're getting a second Big 12 team in. We'll send them up to Boise, Idaho.
I mean, BYU at Boise, nobody, I think that right there would be the least. I thought Ashton Genty.
Iowa State?
Or BYU going up there, or I'm saying a BYU or Iowa State going to Boise State.
Be fun.
That would, I'm sorry now, if people would watch for Ashton Genty, and maybe because nothing else going on, but that would be the Friday night. That'd be one of those games where like we don't expect to have a massive viewership number. Just outside of it's so out west, you're like, that's where the chaos would come into play.
See,
like, why are they on TV?
I would be locked in on that game, but that's also because
casuals would avoid it. Diehards would be watching.
Yes, and people who just love like wild chaos into things, kind of like how I am, I would be locked in for that. But Fresh, something you said there, we'll talk off air. I got an idea for an upcoming show here that we'll do. But folks, we're going to put a bow on week number 8. It was a great weekend, but we have our annual Vegas preview weekend coming up. Week number 9, it's a loaded weekend. Again, that's the great thing about the month of October is all of these games have been completely loaded. Every week seems like we're kicking around, well, which game should we preview? Hey, make sure you follow us on the social media, on the X, because we put out a poll. It's out. We put out a poll. Let you decide which games are going to be joining us for our previews. And special thanks to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. Hey, make sure you're visiting SpinnableSports.com because the Irrational Confidence Podcast is part of Spinnable Sports. Leave us a like, subscribe to the channel. That's all I got, Fresh. We'll wrap it up because we got to do another record real quick, real soon. Preview week number 9.
It's a great week. A lot of great football. We got many more to come. Games to be more as we move forward. Can't wait to be in Vegas next week. Getting to go see Ashton Genty in person versus UNLV on Friday night. So that's going to be an awesome situation. And more details to come on that. With that, y'all have a great one. Go Dogs. Bye, y'all.